In my home state of Missouri, Black youth account for 15% of our youth population, yet receives 27% of referrals to juvenile court. In the St. Louis region, Black girls are 11 times and Black boys are 18 times more likely than their white peers to be suspended from school. These zero tolerance policies regularly do not take into account, they do not take into account the social conditions in which children may live, unsafe and unstable housing, lead exposure, which is to no fault of their own, cyclical violence and trauma in their communities, no fault of their own. And instead, they force our children out of school for acting out and fueling the school to prison pipeline. It is this fear of Black and Brown youth, long labeled super predators, that has made jailing and sentencing them to life without parole too easy and too common. The stereotype that Black and brown boys and girls are dangerous or threatening has normalized systems of trauma, the cradle to prison pipeline, foster care, youth detention, and being tried and sentenced as adults. We treat trauma with more trauma. We treat Black and brown kids who can't vote yet, can't join the military, can't rent a car, or even buy a lottery ticket like adults in our criminal legal system. We deprive them of their joy and their youth, children who deserve to live rich and abundant lives, children who should be allowed to make mistakes, to learn from their mistakes because we did, to grow up and live productive and loving lives. Children like all other children. These children are young. These are children. They're young people who need love and support, that love and support that our communities should give in our government. Mr. Telefoa, thank you for being here with us today and for sharing your story and your incredible work with all of us. Thank you for that as we strive to build a more just America. Can you please tell us about the trauma and the lasting harm that incarceration can have on young people?
Yeah. So speaking of trauma and harm, few a couple weeks ago, I had gotten a call from one of my friends who was sent up to prison, and we were on a three-way call, and I was asking him, like, how are you doing? And I asked him, what was it like when you first got there? And he said, well, the first thing that he did was go and take a shower, and once he walked into that shower, he seen a dead body laying on the floor. Mind you, he's 18 years old, first going into prison. And thinking about that was his first experience when going into that shower, he just seen a dead body, and thinking about how young he was, and how he experienced that. I personally don't think that he's ever going to forget something like that. He's going to carry that on to when he grows up to, take on adult responsibility. So when we think about just trauma and the harm that being in the institution can cause, I feel like that just experience right then and there kind of expresses the totality of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. That is the truth of what is happening to our youth. That is why trauma informed care also, that care and support needs to be prioritized in this space. Thank you. Mr. Peterson, what holistic alternatives to incarceration exist for young people?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What holistic alternatives to incarceration exist for young people?
Sorry, the list of questions. Sorry, you broke up just a little bit. So for us,
Holistic alternatives to
holistic alternatives.
incarceration.
Thank you. Someone said earlier how it's so important that we can't view youth out of context. So we can't have a youth enter the system and all of a sudden not recognize the community or family that they're from. So it could include things that are very informal. So for example, during COVID, when we looked at our youth and our families, we recognized, they couldn't have visits the way they used to have. And so we had to switch to like a virtual platform. Well, there's a big digital divide in a lot of communities. So we had to think of ways of, maybe the family needs something as simple as a smartphone, things like that are these kind of holistic approaches. Or maybe they do need something more intentional and more focused, like some type of evidence-based treatment with the youth and the family. And for us also holistic, when we're talking about holistic, we have to look at educational
I only have a few more
opportunities.
seconds. If you could, yeah. I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I have one more question that I need to get in, but thank you. Mr. Stevenson, your work has always been rooted in a deep commitment to justice and a belief in redemption. Can you tell us why it is important to extend mercy and compassion to children and young people? Mercy.
Well, thank you, Congressman Bush. I think mercy is at the heart of a just system. We've been governed by this idea that we can put crimes in jails and prisons. And you look at some of these sentences and you look at some of these policies, it's if we think we can punish crime. But the truth is we can't put a crime in prison. We put people in prison. We put children in prison. And I don't believe that people are crimes. I don't believe that children are crimes. And the difference between a crime and a child is what dictates that we think more compassionately, that we embrace mercy when we think about these policies.
Thank you. Thank you, and I yield back.